Hey, it's Vicki, and I did a test video about an hour ago and came back in, and this is what happened to the light. I have no clue what has been done to the camera, so bear with me. I'm going to hold this up, kind of balances it a little bit. I've got all my lights off. I don't know where that's coming from, probably from my iPad. That's my script. Anyway, let's get started. I'm Vicki Ross, and I help artists, I teach artists how to, I'm Vicki Ross, and I teach people how to learn and grow as artists, and it fills their free time with peace. I'm going to invite you in a little bit to download a copy of my free PDF roadmap, and I'll tell you about that and how to get it in just a minute. Have you ever wished you could shush your evil twin, like this one that says, "You're never going to be able to get this Facebook thing down. Last week was a debacle, and this week is another debacle." Okay, that one. You can't do that because you don't know how. You don't know how? I swear. Well, of course you don't know how, because you haven't been taught yet. You didn't know how to cook or bake either before somebody showed you how to measure. Without knowing how to measure, you're sure not going to make a cake of any kind. So you have to know the measuring cup is leveled off, unpacked for flour and sugar, and for brown sugar it's packed down as tight as you can get it. So without that, you can't bake. You don't know the basics. Same thing with gymnastics. If you ever took gymnastics, did you go in there on your first day as a cute little 7 or 8 year old and come out and turn perfect flips? No. Somebody had to teach you. And you had to shut that voice up long enough to let you learn. That voice doesn't really want you to learn. I just don't think I don't know, maybe they don't want to see you fail. Maybe it's a good voice in disguise. But we wouldn't do anything if we wouldn't allow ourselves to learn something new. So painting is exactly the same thing. I've seen these things over and over, and like I've told y'all before, I'm not really talking about anything that I haven't done. I have first-hand knowledge of. In our effort to not look stupid, and we want to learn something over here, but we've got that voice over here, and what we got to do is bring them together, and that's where I come in handy. Okay, there's some mistakes that I learned on my path to being an artist, and they're easy enough to correct, but you've got to identify them first. So I'm going to do that for you. Mistake number 1, you go to a class, group class, or a workshop, and you ignore what the tutor puts out in advance to tell you what they want you to have. Did you ever go to grade school and not go with exactly what was on the list? I mean, the teacher wanted you to have Kleenex, you took Kleenex. Even the kids, bless their hearts, who can't afford it, there's places that will make sure you go in that classroom with that list. It's the same when you're an adult. You're not going to learn how to make, I don't know, ground up nuts. You could do it by hand, but food processor would be easier, and if the teacher told you to bring one, you better bring one. Okay, you got that right. That is a never, never, never do it. What happens if you show up without the right supplies to an art class? You'll never get even close to the results the teacher is showing you. And that means you're not going to learn the technique because you haven't controlled that variable of the kind of supplies you have. I hosted a workshop for Leslie B. DeMille. Thank you, Mr. DeMille, for all your teaching. He's been gone about a year. And anyway, he's pretty particular. He was set in his ways, and he had that deep, booming voice, like Cecil B. DeMille. You could hear him to the next block. And anyway, he was explaining how to mix a particular color for a skin tone. And it was really easy. It was just 2 different pigments if you brought what he wanted you to bring. And it said, do not bring student grade paints. So he walked over to this guy who was struggling, and he was working on a nasty, nasty palette. Now, there wasn't a clean spot on it, and it was dry, and it was icky. Anyway, Mr. Les picked up his brush, the student's brush, and his paint, and tried to, here's how you mix that color. And he looked at it, and he said, "What the hell kind of paint are you using? Show me the tube." So he showed him the tube, and it was student quality. Les threw the paint down and said, "You're never going to get there from here. You've got to have what I told you to have, period." So that's how some teachers handle it. Mistake number 2 is you go into a group class and you're nervous because you think everybody's going to think you're stupid and you don't know what you're doing, and what are you doing in this class? I'm better than you. It doesn't work that way, because everybody is so concerned with what they're doing, they don't even notice what you're doing. So everybody's really just isolated at their own easel and doing the best they can to follow along. And then there are those who want to be #teacher's pet. And you know you can't, because you've never done these techniques before. But you still kind of want to get a pat on the head. You know. Yeah, been there. But eventually I learned that, just be myself. Though it wasn't anything you could do about it. And the other thing I noticed in those kind of situations, that if you're going to a workshop, you better get there early if you want a good seat, because the retired ladies get there dark 30 and wait, and then they barrel in that room and they know exactly where they want to get, so they can see the most of what the teacher's showing. Okay, and some of those are also the ones that try to harness the teacher's attention for 30 minutes at a time. In essence, if there's 15 or 20 people in the room, he can't go around the room very many times and add a girls or pat you on the heads or whatever. So those kind of people are real selfish, and there are a lot of them. The other thing that I learned the hard way, well, not really, I observed it. That's what I did. Don't ever, 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 ever interrupt a teacher and say, "But my other teacher told me to do it this way." Or, "That's not what my other teacher said." That will shut down a teacher's flow quicker than anything, and it makes you look like, well, you want to turn around and say, "Then why did you sign up for my class if you already knew it all?" So don't do that. Wiki, remember, don't do that. There's another big one, and I talk about it just about every week. Don't invite your evil twin into your studio. Mine is called Victoria, and she flaps her gums over here on this side. And my fun one is Wiki, and she's over here sitting on this shoulder trying to out-whisper Victoria. Like Van Gogh said, if you hear a voice within you say you cannot paint, then by all means paint. And that voice will be silenced, and that's true. So if you learn a few psychological trips and ticks, that works. Anyway, if you learn a few psychological tricks, you can trick that voice over here into shutting up. And when you can do that, and this one over here is silent a lot of times, just encouraging you to just make a mark. Turn the brush around and make a mark. And this one over here is busy doing something else, and I've got a bunch of ways to show you how to make her stay outside. If your space is on a table or if it's in a room, we're going to learn how to leave her outside. I have several tips that fix that. And I do want to tell you that you can get there from here, and we're going to learn how together. Control the variables you can control, supplies, shush the evil voice, that sort of thing. And the things that you can't control, like the water in watercolor, because it'll move that pigment wherever it wants to go. And those you just sit back and enjoy the ride, and that's where the learning occurs. Okay. If you can get to that point, you can create a Zen zone that will allow you to relax. Your blood pressure will go down. The physiological changes have been tested. Painting is just like people who meditate, people who run, and they reach that space where they just keep going. And you come out of it and you feel like you're rested. And if you've had a major trauma like I've had and a lot of people have had, you appreciate even 5 minutes of peace. So that's what this is all about. My workbook is linked below, and it will outline for you the steps I took on my art journey, and there's 8 of them. And if you want to do it the way I did it, I'm going to tell you how I did it. The other thing is there's a free Facebook group that is developing into being a great community of like-minded people, and by that I mean people who get stuck on something, they think they can't do it, so they talk about it on in the group, and it's not about anything specific. It's just people who like to be creative talking to each other. Let's see, what else? I guess that's it. Let me look. Oh, one more thing. If you're on the list, that means you've downloaded the roadmap. Next week you'll get a couple of emails inviting you to an event week from Monday. So I know you don't want to miss out on that. So we're going to have a lot of fun. Okay, here's me blown out. Here's me. Oh, do you like my new black? I've had it just as long as I've had the white one. But I like it better. I'm not as white. Well, yeah, you know. Bye. See you on Monday for another one. Finish.